Wagantall, Member of Parliament for Yorkton Malville in Saskatchewan, and I really appreciate you coming out today to just hear a little bit about how my day's gone. First of all, though, as I'm going to be talking about the dynamics about being removed from the House of Commons today, I just want to first of all thank some people. First of all, when the decision was made before we came back after the campaign, the election, to have the Board of Internal Economy come up with a ruling about who could and couldn't go into the House of Commons, that became the Speaker's responsibility to make that happen. And I had a wonderful personal conversation with him about the fact that he was going to do everything he could for those who might possibly need an exemption to be in the House, to have the opportunity to present themselves in a very private manner and to have their paperwork studied very privately, and to have the only person, and I'm quoting him, on the Hill who has the authority to make that decision, and of course that's the medical professional who is the House of Commons nurse. And that process went very, very well. And I want to thank him and also thank the nurse who did a remarkable job of looking at the evidence and making a very rational and reasonable decision on those things, specifically in regard to myself as well. And then the Sergeant at Arms, who was kind enough to walk with me down the hill today, and all of the protective services, they are just simply doing the job that is there for them to do, and was very polite, and I appreciated the opportunity to talk with him a little bit about the dynamics, which of course he has no control over, but it felt good to just have that conversation. The interpreters and translators have been overworked, as you guys all know, through this whole process of going with virtual and being on Zoom. And of course I voted against that whole process. We should be here on the Hill, and I would like nothing better. Had a good couple of days here, but they go through an awful lot in trying to deal with the added work and the pressure on their own health, so I want to thank them. And finally, I have to thank my caucus. They have come out with rational, very strong arguments and questions to the government in regard to mandates and this whole approach that the government has taken on travel and on supposedly protecting Canadians, and the fact that they insist that we are still in the midst of a COVID pandemic. So today I had the opportunity to sit in the House again. I've been there for 3 days. I enjoyed very much sitting in my place where I should be, being part of House duty, question period, and voting. So that was wonderful. And I have to say that part of the reason for me going ahead and doing that is something that is on the very back of every Member of Parliament's badge, their ID that identifies them as a Member of Parliament. And I'm going to just read it to you directly from the back of my card. Under the law of parliamentary privilege, the bearer has free and open access at all times without obstruction or interference to the precincts of the House of Parliament of which the bearer is a member. So that reflects what every one of us as members of Parliament have as the right and the privilege, and quite honestly, for me, it's an incredible blessing and honor to represent my constituents when I come to the Hill in that place. So unfortunately, this government, when the Board of Internal Economy, the Speaker ruled they should not have done what they did, it was overreach. That didn't end things. What that did is gave the Prime Minister an opportunity to bring something forward in the House, and the NDP Liberal Coalition voted together to basically not reflect what was originally required for those opportunities to have an exemption, but made it virtually impossible. At which point, the House of Commons nurse had no choice but to reflect the political will of the Prime Minister rather than her medical professional perspective. So that's where we're at today. I have been in the House and loved every minute of it, and I believe that's where I should be. And my caucus has been remarkable, and I appreciate the work they continue to do to bring this to an end. So I'm pleased to be here with you guys. Answer any questions if I can. I certainly will.
So can you just walk us through what happened when it comes to as far as your removal from the precinct was concerned? Where were you? What time did this happen? What day did this happen?
Well, it happened today. I was in the House of Commons. I was expecting something to happen, and learned today that there was a possibility of that. So as I was walking in, And
To the chamber.
into the West Block, into the chamber. Down the hallway, the Sergeant at Arms came out of his office and said, "Hello, Miss Wagantall," at which point we went into his office and had a conversation. And then later on, as I was about to leave, my house leader informed me that when I walked out, now I could stay in the house and as long as the house was sitting, but at some point I would need to leave. So my goal was to not leave unless I was basically forced to, which to some degree happened. I could have stayed, but my Veterans Affairs Committee was meeting at 1 o'clock and we were studying service dog report and I did not want to miss that. So I decided to forego staying in the house and walked out of the lobby, at which point I'm no longer protected. I'm in the precinct where I could be apprehended. There were precinct, the servicemen were there at the door as I walked out. They were at the top of the stairs, they were at the bottom of the stairs. I went out the door and no one stopped me. This is the advantage of being a little uniquely, I don't look like any of my pictures. So they didn't recognize me, I guess. So I just walked out and was walking down the hill, and the Sergeant at Arms, who had met me earlier in the day, was halfway down the hill, and then he escorted me the rest of the way to my car.
So you voluntarily walked out, it sounds like. You were informed that something was going to happen at some point, and then you voluntarily left. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, voluntarily, as in at one point or another, once the house is no longer sitting, I would be apprehended at that point regardless, and I didn't want to miss committee.
So you came back for 3 days. Was that under the assumption that your exemption had been accepted, or were you just coming back on the off chance that you'd just be able to come in without any issues?
Well, my circumstances are very unique. Obviously, I can't go in the house. I'm also not allowed to fly or take a train. I live in Saskatchewan. And so I have traveled here by car 4 times in the last few months through the winter. Your Great Lakes I don't like in the winter. I'll just mention that. It's very treacherous. But it takes me 3.5 days to get here and 3.5 days to get home. So I chose to stay. I came towards the end of April, and I will not be able to go home until June 14th, at which point I have responsibilities there I just need to get home to. And I had the opportunity to host the National Prayer Breakfast a couple of days ago, which I'd like to mention as well. The Prime Minister was there, as was the leader of the official opposition. We were sitting, myself, him, and her. I was so pleased to have them there, believe me. But our Prime Minister sat beside me for an hour and a half in very close quarters with no mask, eating, and we were singing. And that is a block, the Delta downtown. Give him a little plug here. A matter of just a few blocks from here. So the hypocrisy is just unbearable. I have been very patient for a long time, and I think it's time that, appreciate you guys as well, expressing the fact that this is ridiculous. Ontario is open. My province has been open for a long time. I'm not, making light of anyone who has suffered with COVID. I have people very dear to me who have, but regardless, it's time for this country to get on. And the fact that when the convoy was here, this was Ottawa, and now all of a sudden I'm in a federal jurisdiction where I don't have the freedoms that everyone else has. I go everywhere in Ottawa except for here.
But I'm just trying to figure out if you had received any assurances or word that you would be allowed back in the house, and that was pulled. It doesn't seem like you'd received anything from the Speaker or the Sergeant at Arms saying that you'd be allowed in.
No.
So you, I have some quick questions if I can. I just want to be sure. Your medical status is none of my business. I'm assuming this has to do with your declining to show proof of vaccination when asked, correct? Can I ask, it's my understanding it's not up to the Sergeant at Arms or the House nurse. It's the electors of Yorkton Melville who decide who sits in the House for Yorkton Melville. What's your understanding? Is that your understanding? Is that fair?
Absolutely. 70% of the people of Yorkton Melville voted for me to be their representation in the House of Commons.
So when Government House Leader Holland first talked about a vaccine mandate and mused about expulsion last fall, we looked it up. Would you like to know the names of other MPs who have been expelled from the House of Commons? One is Louis Riel, and the other was Fred Rose, a communist spy. there have been convicted felons who have not been denied their seat in the House of Commons, and now Mrs. Wagantall from Yorkton. Can you comment on that?
Was a different prime minister? Was a different prime minister at the time?
I guess I'm asking you about proportionality here. You're not a communist spy. You haven't been convicted of treason. You're representing your electors. Can you comment on the proportionality?
I'm concerned that I'm representing all kinds of Canadians in this process. So it's not just about me. I have all kinds of people in my constituency, and I have to have a call out to my amazing people in my office who have dealt with people just beyond stressed, crying because they have lost their jobs or they can't get from where they are to where they need to go. And it's deplorable. It's deplorable that Canadians are being treated the way that we are being treated by this Prime Minister when there is nothing here that validates this kind of behavior on his part.
So, my last question, the 44th Parliament could last a long time. Obviously, you are not going to change your mind about disclosing your private medical status, which is no one's business. So how long are you prepared to not personally take your seat in the House of Commons?
Well, I tried to change that today, and I'll continue to try in any way that we can, as is my party, working towards requesting that this end on June 23rd as it should. As a matter of fact, should have ended when Ontario opened up. So I'm prepared to do whatever I need to do to continue to do my job as best I can in light of the circumstances. And from there we'll see what happens.
So you plan to keep going back into the House even if the Sergeant at Arms and the Speaker, whoever it may be, has said that you can't come back into the chamber?
No, that's not what I said.
No, I'm trying to clarify.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Clarify. Good. I'm not sure what it'll take before we can get this straightened out, and the Prime Minister will have a change of heart. It's clearly an action on his part, and the Minister of Transportation, the House Leader, you name them, they're all convinced as they sit there with their masks on throughout the entire time when they're in the House of Commons, but then go out for drinks in the evening, and that's all left at the wayside. So I guess COVID only exists in the House of Commons.
Why did you wait this long to come back? It's been a while.
Mm-hmm.
What was the rationale for doing it now?
Well, as I say, through the winter it's been complicated, and I want to be in my riding and doing my job there as well. So it was a matter of, for quite a while, I was working from my home on Zoom in Saskatchewan, and then started to travel. I have to say that there's no way that any of our public servants are being nearly as efficient as they should be working from home. I'm a multitasker, and it's amazing what else you can get done while you're supposed to be doing what you're doing in the House, and I find that really frustrating. So I chose to be here as much as I possibly could and still try and balance it off with being in my riding where my wonderful people are. So.
What? So you said that you're having trouble accessing the House, and also you can't fly because you've made a different medical decision than what the Prime Minister would have liked you to make. So can you maybe just explain how your vaccine status has stopped you from properly performing your duties as an elected official?
Has stopped me?
Has stopped you from properly doing it?
Well, I mean, I think the hardest thing is the fact that I cannot get back and forth from my riding. Up until this started happening, I was home every weekend. And in Saskatchewan, in a rural riding, just to help you see that picture, it takes me 10 hours from my door here to my own home in Saskatchewan to get there. That's 20 hours of travel per weekend. And when I land in Regina, I have 2.5 hours to go home, but my riding, I can travel as far as 4.5 hours to get to an event on a Saturday, hightail back to Regina so that I can get on a plane and get back to work on Sunday. So that has been really hard because I am not able to go back and forth to my riding as much as I would like. And certainly in regard to constituency weeks, it's not that simple when you take 6 days to travel to and from. Also, for your information, if you want to get a rental car, I was able to 3 times do the drive on my own. My husband did come with me once prior to that. And then this last time when I went to book a vehicle in Winnipeg, so we drive 5 hours to Winnipeg to get a vehicle so I can drive to Ottawa. They are so short on cars that are running and there's no parts available, and they didn't have new vehicles before this happened. So you're no longer allowed to drive a car out of the province and leave it out of the province. So my husband had to take a full 6 days off of work to go and get me here, take 24 hours to rest up and drive back. So those are the kinds of things that make it really hard for me to do what I need to do, even as far as committee meetings, stakeholder meetings, all kinds of events that take place specifically within the precinct here that is out of my ability. I am meeting people in restaurants and buying a lot of coffee.
Just, can you help us understand why there should be an exemption for you when so many Canadians have not had that exemption? So many Canadians have had to abide by these mandates, whether or not they agreed with it or not. Why should there be an exemption for you? And just, I ask that with kindness,
Right.
not
No, I understand.
with
I
any
appreciate
judgment.
that. Yeah, actually there are very good reasons why an exemption should be given to a number of Canadians, actually the majority of them, because there are a lot of reasons why an individual may choose not to get vaccinated or are unable to be vaccinated. And this Prime Minister has decided that the only way you get an exemption is if you take that first vaccine and you have an anaphylactic reaction to it. That's insane. And the fact that the nurse of the House of Commons gave those exemptions shows that she is a medical professional and she understands, and she's not working out of a political agenda. She's doing what is right, and the majority of Canadians, I think, especially public servants and those who are maybe more under the thumb of this government, are not being given fair treatment in that regard.
Can I ask why you haven't been vaccinated? I mean, many
I
people.
didn't say I'm not.
You said you couldn't get on a plane or a train.
That's right. I'm not revealing my status.
Mrs. Wagantall, you still have access to your office in a federal building?
I cannot go in my office. I have not been in my office since last November. Yeah,
Your office is Confederation or Valor Building, or
Confed.
they barred you from entering your office.
That's right.
How about getting on one of the green buses? Did you go to one of
No.
the green? But you could go to the National Prayer Breakfast and sit, I'm imagining, within 6 feet of perhaps the Prime Minister. Or
I was
whatever
within
they-
2 feet of the Prime Minister.
So that is
Not even.
ironic.
Yes, it is.
But I mean, just coming back to what other Canadians have to endure. I mean, other Canadians have to follow these exemptions. Just why should you be given that exemption if other
All
Canadians?
Canadians are being denied the exemptions that they should be able to have. There are people who have worked for years for a particular company, actually from home, as a middle management individual, and called me and said, I've been told I have to vaccinate because I'm a public servant, and does not go anywhere near one of those buildings. I respect, I have people in my family who have conditions, and I chose to wear a mask. We chose to social distance when it was necessary, and I was on planes back and forth every weekend, following the orders, having a mask on in the plane, for months before vaccines ever showed up. I guarantee you a huge portion of the Canadian public has natural immunity that this Prime Minister would not even recognize. It didn't matter, you had to get vaccinated. And that is contrary to medical science. You're welcome.
You said earlier that another nurse has been basically forced to take on what you call the politicized exemptions. Canada is one of the only places left in the world that requires vaccinations. In Europe, most countries have dropped all mandates. You don't need one to fly in the United States. In fact, in the U.S., unvaccinated people can fly maskless on planes. Why do you think the Prime Minister is continuing to hold down and continuing to extend the restrictions as he did this week?
I would really love you all to ask him that question over and over and over again, and put it in your papers and whatnot. Why do I think? Well, there's clearly an alternative agenda because it's not about COVID. I don't think it's about COVID.
I just want to make sure we get this right. You walked out of the House of Commons. You were warned that you were going to be removed.
right.
And so you preemptively took the decision to leave so you would not
Again,
miss your
yes.
committee meeting.
That's right. That's right.
Well, couldn't you have joined your committee meeting virtually?
I did join my committee virtually. I joined from my home.
Okay.
Yes, and I wanted to be there and focus on what I had to do for that particular committee. And let's face it, at some point when I came out of the building, I didn't have a pillow, I didn't have a sleeping bag, I wasn't planning to stay all night. I just wanted to do my job. And at some point, regardless, once the House rises, I believe, they would have the authority to come in and remove me regardless.
Were you prepared to, had you not had that committee meeting, were you prepared for that?
I was prepared to have them remove me, which they basically have done regardless.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Anyone
Thanks.
else? Thank you all. Appreciate it.